Okay, so hi everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Jenna Pilcher. I'm the Trust Speech and Language Therapist, and I'm based at Rivermead, Marlborough Centre and Who. So I'm just going to be taking you through the 12 sessions that will be on offer in the Speech and Language Pathway. So the first session will be kind of an introduction to the pathway. So it will be, what is SLCN? So speech, language and communication needs is what it stands for. Hopefully you all knew that. And in this module, we'll be covering what the difference is between speech and language. These terms are often used quite interchangeably, but there is a big difference between them. We'll also be covering who is at risk, the causes of SLCN, the impact of SLCN. So this is on behaviour, educational outcomes, employability, and how you can identify SLCN in the classroom, and then how you can make appropriate referrals if necessary. And we'll also be covering the speech and language pyramid, which you can see here. So module 2 will be on colourful semantics. So colourful semantics is a colour-coded visual framework to support development of grammar and sentence structure. So some of you might be familiar with this and already use it in your classrooms, but it will be a beneficial workshop for understanding and answering WH questions. So that's your who, what, where questions. Developing sentence length, so any learners who produce quite short sentences. Developing storytelling skills and vocabulary, and supporting learners who get their sentences a bit jumbled up, so word order. And that's just a picture there of how you would structure a sentence using colourful semantics. So the third session would be on keyword instructions. So in short, the keyword instructions refers to the number of words you need to understand to follow an instruction. So for those of you who have children in your class who have a My Plan, or learners in your class who have a speech and language My Plan with targets, you might see keyword level or information carrying words named on there. And I think this can be quite a confusing term. So we'll be really going into that in this session, and you can have a go at putting together some instructions yourself. So we'll be going through activities such as barrier games, and focusing on the importance of giving clear instructions to learners in your class. So being aware of each learner's keyword level and making sure you're really keeping those instructions to the level that they're going to be able to understand. So the fourth session will be on social communication skills. So we'll be touching on which learners can benefit. So it's obviously beneficial for all learners to have good social communication skills, but identifying which particular learners in your class will benefit from a bit of extra support, and how you can set up groups in your school to support with this. And we'll also touch on developing some social communication skills in class for all learners. So this will encompass responding appropriately to verbal and non-verbal communication, and we'll go through some useful resources which you'll be able to use with your learners. So some of you might be familiar with the Talk About books. So the fifth session will be on vocabulary development. So vocabulary is important for all areas of communication and learning. So in this session, we'll be going through how you can support learners individually, in groups, and how you can do whole class activities and incorporate vocabulary activities into your lessons. So some of you might be aware of the Word Aware books. So that's basically covers teaching vocabulary across the curriculum. So that has things like the STAR approach in it. So that's select, teach, activate, and review, and how we can really make sure learners are remembering the vocabulary that we're teaching them. And we'll also go through some other resources which might be useful for in lessons, so word and semantic maps or attribute spinners, and you can see an example of that here. The sixth session will be on using visuals to support learning. So we'll be discussing the power of visual aids and how you can use these throughout the day to support learners' comprehension, transition in between lessons, memory, recall. So we'll be going through, some of you might be familiar with now next boards, task boards, visual timetables, and we'll be going through how you can differentiate these for learners at different levels. And this is all forms part of creating a total communication environment. Our seventh session will be on blank levels of questioning. So there's 4 levels of questioning: naming, describing, retelling, and justifying. So we'll be discussing how to adapt your language and questioning style for each learner's level of understanding and language. So I'll be going through the language for thinking resources, which are really useful as a whole class activity in English or literacy lessons, or for smaller group work or individual sessions. And it's all about promoting verbal reasoning and those higher level thinking skills. The 8th session will be on Lego therapy. So it's an evidence-based approach aimed to support social communication skills. So sharing, turn-taking, following rules, using names, and problem solving. So we'll be going through how you can set up Lego groups for learners who will benefit in your classes. So it's a really enjoyable short group activity that lots of learners really enjoy and engage with. The 9th session will be on dyslexia-friendly classrooms. So we'll be covering what is dyslexia, what every teacher and TA can do in class, recognising learners who may be at risk, strategies that can be used every day in lessons to support all learners, and going towards the inclusive classroom. So coming back to that word inclusive again. The 10th session is going to be on working memory. So we'll be covering what is working memory and what tasks involve working memory, what causes working memory problems and how it can affect learning, recognising or identifying learners in class who might have limited working memory and need a bit of support to implement strategies to support their working memory and to support them with their learning. The 11th session is on SimWriter. So I know Rivermead staff should be familiar with SimWriter. I'm not sure the other schools are using it yet, but how we can incorporate SimWriter into our lessons. So SimWriter is a symbol-supported word processor program which aids communication and literacy barriers. So how it can be used as part of quality first teaching, or as Beth said, high quality teaching. So SimWriter can be used to support learners with auditory processing difficulties, specific learning difficulties such as dyslexia, and speech, language and communication needs. And it can help with retrieval and working memory, sentence comprehension or understanding, and mastery. So there's just a brief example there of how you type into SimWriter and the symbols appear, and it can really support those learners who struggle with language. And then the 12th and final session will be a Q&A session. So having attended the 11 sessions before, hopefully you'll have some questions. So this will be your opportunity to ask questions about the topics covered in the pathway, to identify any areas you would like further support with going forwards, and perhaps we can set up more CPD sessions from that if required. You could use it as an opportunity to discuss specific learners. So if there's a specific learner in your class that you'd like a bit of extra support with, we can kind of use it as a session to discuss your concerns and advise you on the next best steps, and support implementing any strategies and ideas that we've discussed in the 11 sessions. So we could use this support as a session to support with creating resources and how you can adapt these, because obviously here we've got mainstream and SEN learners primary age and secondary age. So just how we can differentiate and adapt these resources to be useful for everyone. So you might be sitting thinking some of those sessions won't be useful to you, but you never know which learners will be in your class next year and which learners might come through with a speech and language My Plan. And then it would just be useful that you've attended these sessions and kind of have a head start with that. So that's the speech and language pathway. And I'm handing over to Shelley.